Good afternoon, everybody. I like how the energy is still very high after lunch. That's not always the case, so thank you all. So I know earlier our wonderful chairman, Matt Schlapp, said he was moderating the most important panel of the day, and I have no authority to do so, but I'm going to overrule him and say this is actually the most important panel of the day. I'll hear about that later, that's okay. But we have an amazing group of folks up here to talk about an issue that has really been moving for 10 years, somewhat quietly, but now it's starting to get a lot more attention. And it's something that the president supported. It's something that Pennsylvania's really been a leader on, and that's criminal justice reform. So before we get started here, I want to let our panelists do a quick introduction of themselves, and then we'll get into it. So we'll start with you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Welcome again to Washington County, Senator Camera Bartolotta, and you're in the middle of my district. So welcome, thank you for being here. Great to see you. This subject is very near and dear to my heart. In the December of 2018, I created the very first ever Criminal Justice Reform Caucus in the Senate of Pennsylvania. Yet 2018, they never had one before. That's astounding. Immediately after that, my phone blew up because we got phone calls from, again, this is like a bar joke. What do the Koch brothers, ACLU, Newt Gingrich, and Van Jones all have in common? It's criminal justice reform. So we took off with that, and we have been incredibly busy. This has just been an amazing ride to bring to attention an amazing idea that in Pennsylvania in particular, incarceration is a business, and we have to stop it. So we will get into the details of that in a few minutes, but it is, there we go, exactly, yes. Join this young man, please. Yes, it really is vital. We are incarcerating people more often than almost any other state in the entire country. We have to do something about it, not fiscally, but morally and ethically. So thank you for this topic.
Awesome, thank you, Senator. Congressman, to you.
Sure, Guy Reschenthaler. So just to give you, thanks. I'll say my background just real briefly because it explains a lot of where I am on the issue. So I was in the Navy, I was a JAG, I prosecuted terrorists in Iraq, and then I was a defense attorney in the Navy as well. I actually got to defend sailors and Marines and Coast Guardsmen, not only in the United States, but in Iraq as well. So I got out of the Navy with that litigation experience, and I was elected magisterial district judge in 2013. And I can tell you, when you're an MDJ, you're on the front lines of the criminal justice system. I mean, that's the first level of the criminal justice system. And I saw firsthand the revolving door between prison and street. So I try to incorporate things into my practice as a judge that would prevent that. So for example, my mentor, Tim Murphy, and my predecessors here in the audience, we worked a lot. We worked a lot on mental screening and substance screening. So for example, if somebody had an issue before me and we could get a substance abuse screening or a mental health screening done, we found that most often the crime was committed because of an untreated or undiagnosed mental health illness, which then led to a substance abuse addiction or problem. So instead of just throwing that person in jail, instead of giving them a cot in a jail cell, why don't we get them a bed in a treatment facility and stop the revolving door? And a lot of people like to say, well, that's being soft on crime. That's not being soft on crime. It's being smart on crime. And when you reduce, thank you. It is common sense. And when you reduce recidivism, that's the hardest you can be on crime because by definition, you're frankly eliminating crime in the future. So you can't be harder on crime than eliminating future crimes from taking place. So thanks for having me here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome, thank you, Congressman. And last but not least, Ashley.
Hey everyone, Ashley Klingon-Smith. I'm the State Director of Americans for Prosperity, Pennsylvania. We are one of 34 state chapters across the nation. We're headquartered in Arlington, Virginia, but we have a full-time team on the ground here in Pennsylvania. I like to say I'm taking back the term community organizer. We are a grassroots organization. We are committed to empowering each and every one of you to have a voice in the legislative process process and the policy making process, and then most importantly in the accountability process. Because a lot of times it's easy to make a phone call, this guy's my congressman, and it sure is easy to call and complain or register your dismay about a certain bill or law, but we have to also thank them when they're doing a good job and encourage them to keep up the hard work and remain courageous in what's a really tough environment, both in the DC and Harrisburg swamp. So it's so awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Right on. Well, thank you all for being here and for sharing your experience with this issue. And criminal justice reform is something that, when you just say those three words, criminal justice reform, nobody really knows what exactly you're talking about. It's a term that's been co-opted a little bit by our friends on the left to mean, well, quite frankly, what you're seeing in Portland and other places. That's not criminal justice reform. That's letting criminals do whatever they want to do. That's not safe for anybody. That's not smart for anybody. And, we've seen this conservative criminal justice reform really move. It started in Texas when then Governor Perry decided that he didn't want to spend $2 billion to build more prisons. He gave his legislature a charge to not build those and figure out another way to keep the community safe while dealing with these folks who have run afoul at the law. And Texas has been amazingly successful. They didn't spend that $2 billion. They instead have closed, I think, maybe it's 8 prisons now since 2007, saving billions of dollars. And the crime rate is about what it was in 1968 or so. So what Texas is doing is working, and other states have followed suit. The president has supported it. Pennsylvania has now been on the forefront of it, thanks to a lot of the folks you see up on this stage. And Pennsylvania, as a red state, as a deep red state with tough on crime roots, with a state that the president carried, this state's also a leader on criminal justice reform. So, Senator, I want to go to you. And how do you square being a leader on criminal justice reform, but also being a deep red, tough on crime state? And how does that work? And how has it worked for you so far?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Texas scenario because, as you just said, they had a choice way back when to spend $200 million on building more prisons or focus that funding on family therapy and working on juvenile crime prevention, treating those with mental health issues, and the return on that investment was astronomical. We're spending our money in the wrong place in Pennsylvania. When we reduce the prison population because we are focusing on letting people out who they're only in there. Let me tell you one thing. A third of the people who are incarcerated in the county system are there not because they have committed another crime. They're there because they had a technical violation on their probation. I have a bill, Senate Bill 14 right now. It passed the Senate with overwhelming majority. It is in the House right now. Probation reform is what we need to focus on because, again, in county lockup, you have the majority of people that are there because they committed not a crime. They didn't call their probation officer in time. 3 years after they were out on probation, they might have taken their kid to their soccer game across the county line. All of these things that no one would ever imagine are considered illegal. These people can get locked up for the remainder of their original sentence. We're spending $47,000 a year to incarcerate people because they didn't make a phone call. That's ludicrous. That's not keeping families together. That's not putting able-bodied people to work. That's not reducing crime in any way, shape, or form. So that's just one of the things we're working on. In Pennsylvania, I was also asked by the Lieutenant Governor to spearhead some legislation. That is to reform our pardons board. Right now, if you would like a commutation for a life sentence, you need a 5-0 majority, an overwhelming majority, a unanimous majority to commute a life sentence. There are people who have been put behind bars for life because they happen to be in the area, part of a gang, they were not the shooter, and something tragic happened. And they're in prison for life. Now, under 60 years old, they cost us close to 50 grand a year. Over that, close to $100,000. We have people who are behind bars for life who are almost in a vegetative state, and you are paying over $100,000 a year to keep them behind bars. That doesn't make sense to us. So there are so many things that we can work on. One of the bills that I'm working on, and to your point, what's happening in Pennsylvania, and I can segue into the federal with Congressman Guy Reschenthaler. I have a bill, Senate Bill 1275. It's in judiciary right now. It's dignity and safety for incarcerated women. We have women behind bars who are pregnant. They're not getting any information, any kind of prenatal anything. They are victims of invasive cavity searches. And oh, by the way, when they go into labor, they're shackled. How many moms in the audience? Can you imagine going into labor and being shackled? We need to do better. So my bill not only would address those issues for incarcerated women, but it would train them, it would teach them. Because here's a little known fact. We have a huge problem in Pennsylvania with incarcerated women being victims of human trafficking. These women who are incarcerated, their names are in the paper, they're well known, the news is out there, they know who they are, and these predators prey on these women and tell them they're going to be their savior when they get out. These women get out of incarceration and they are victims of human trafficking. They have to be educated, and we have to stop that horrible human trafficking chain that happens in incarceration. So I'm very happy that we're pushing that forward. So I'll pass the baton.
I was going to say, and thank you for that. And the Dignity for Incarcerated Women bill is just an incredible bill that really doesn't get rid of any accountability. It really just makes sure that we're right-sizing everything we're doing and making sure that common sense is really in place in the system. Because right now, in so many places, it's not. And Congressman, I want to go to you because you've seen kind of both sides. You've been very active leading the charge in Pennsylvania, and now you've tried to bring successful things that have happened here to Washington, where again a lot of things go to die, but you've been a leader on clean slate is one of the big things that you've been working on that you're trying to bring there. Can you explain a little bit about kind of how you came to this issue as something that you really support, and as one that you really have brought leading the charge in Washington amongst conservatives who really need that kick?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of it's personal, and part of it is just ideological. The personal side of it is I was a lifeguard at Sandcastle when I was younger, and a really good friend of mine. Normal person, normal teenager. She didn't come back one summer, and we were like, what happened to this person? She's was a very good friend of mine. We didn't know. Turns out she became addicted to very highly addictive drugs, committed several crimes because of it, and we didn't see her. We didn't see her anymore. So I finally reconnected with her after I got out of the Navy, and she was explaining to me how hard it is to re-enter the workforce, and because of that, it got me really into the idea of clean slate. And when Clean Slate was coming through the state Senate, of course I was with Cameron in the state Senate, Scott Wagner was leading the charge. Scott left to run for governor, so he handed it over to a few of his, I would describe, lieutenants like Cameron and myself. And so we made sure we got it across the finish line. But I can tell you that this is a huge issue. So let me just give you a stat. 1 in 3 Americans have a criminal record of some sort. And that's a huge stigma when people are going to apply for jobs, when they're going to get promotions, when they're trying to get entry into college, when they're renting a place. So that stigma is actually suppressing economic growth. So just as much as this is a law and justice issue, a criminal justice reform issue, it's also an economic issue. And that's why I'm going to try to get my clean slate bill that I have in Congress as an amendment into the COVID relief package, because we can get it done that way. But if I could just go back to the clean slate that we had in the Senate, a lot of people thought when we were rolling this out that it wasn't conservative enough, and we were having a hard time getting co-sponsors on it. By the time clean slate passed, it passed unanimously. People were clamoring to get involved. And I'm seeing the same thing happen in Congress, where a lot of people don't understand the economic ramifications and giving somebody a clean slate to go forward and reach their full potential. So again, it's just as much as a law and justice issue, making sure people are not coming back in the system, as it is an economic issue. And I want to be clear about something. This is only nonviolent offenses. My bill in Congress would have an automatic sealing of records for anybody that was caught with a low amount drug possession, automatically sealed, so the person doesn't even have to hire a lawyer. And then they can petition the court for, again, nonviolent offenses. We're not talking about any kind of crime on person or property. This is a true this is a true low-level offense kind of thing. Now, I had a big week last week because I got 2 other criminal justice reform bills through just real fast. I'll hit on them. One was a bill to give incarcerated women who are pregnant a standardized care for treatment, not only mental health, diet, but physical treatment, standardize that. That passed at a Judiciary Committee, really proud of that. And then another one, thanks. And then another one is a grant program that makes sure that it's a one-stop shop when someone gets released from prison. So every year, 600,000 Americans are released from prison. 66, or roughly 2/3 of those people, will probably, by statistics now, will come back and rematriculate into the criminal justice system. That's a problem. So the one-stop shop idea is that we give federal grants to these places that do education, mental health, substance abuse treatment, job training, and job placement. I truly believe that if we fund this program, it passed out of judiciary, but if we see this stepped up, it will reduce that recidivism rate. It will save us money, like Cameron was mentioning, but will also make sure these individuals are back in society, being productive, not coming back in this system.
Absolutely. And the congressman had a great statistic, and that's the fact that 60-something% of folks coming out of the system fail. The system is a government system. It's run by the government, and it fails about 2/3 of the time. That is a pretty bad rate of success, like very bad, like extremely bad. If you had somebody building bridges for you and 2/3 of them failed, they wouldn't be building bridges any longer. If you took your car somewhere and 2/3 of the time it still didn't work, you wouldn't take your car back there. Yet we continue to pour money into a system that isn't making folks better, is warehousing them for a ton of money, and we're putting them back out with no real opportunity. And with the restrictions of folks with a criminal record, it's in the hundreds of thousands of rules and regulations and laws of, if you have a criminal record, there's things that you can't do, whether it's find housing, work at certain places, coach your kid's AAU team. There's things that you can't do with that, and and it's really just a wall to getting back into society and being a productive member. And Ashley, I want to go to you real quick as somebody that's been kind of on the ground in these fights and seeing how the state has really shifted to embracing these and really becoming a leader on these. How has kind of that shift taken place, and where are we going next?
Yeah, well, the congressman said the statistic, but I think we've got to a spot where most Americans do have a vested interest in this conversation, because 1 in 3 people in America have a criminal record. And so that likely means that a neighbor, a friend, a family member has an experience with the criminal justice system. And so we were hearing from a lot of our activists that they wanted to work on this issue. The president was leading the conversation in Washington. Let's start working on it. So I will tell you that each piece of legislation that we either endorse or oppose, we kind of vet by our criminal justice North Star. And as conservatives, we all know that principles are the things that we look to first before we decide all of the nitty-gritty details. And so our vision for an effective criminal justice system is, first, one that protects people and preserves public safety. That has to be the first tenet of an effective criminal justice system. Second, one that respects human dignity, one that restores victims, one that removes barriers to opportunity for people with criminal records, and one that ensures equal justice under the law for all. And if we're all dedicated to the principles that are in the Constitution, that is a sound kind of North Star to vet policies that we're going to support through. And so, I'll tell you, our activists, and I know every single person here, believes that free people are capable of extraordinary things. And a lot of you know that we've worked on, yes, thank you for that, yes. And we've worked on economic opportunity issues like removing regulations for entrepreneurs that are just trying to open up a new business. But look, the same has to be applied, that same line of thinking, to people that are re-entering society or people that are stuck in a system. And so that's why it's been really easy to endorse legislation like the senator mentioned, her Dignity for Incarcerated Women's bill. What's awesome is there is a complementary bill in the state house that is prime sponsored by a very conservative Republican from York County, Representative Jones, and a pretty progressive progressive Philadelphia area Democrat Representative Cephas. And I think what is most encouraging from our activists, we're a nonpartisan group. We just love liberty and want to get government out of the way of people paving their own path to their unique version of the American dream. But what has been most exciting working on this issue portfolio is that you see such unique collaborations. And at the end of the day, we want progress from our elected officials. And so when people that are at the most opposite ends of the ideological spectrum can come together and work together, it really is perpetuating that Frederick Douglass mantra of, I will work with anyone to do good and no one to do harm. So at AFP, we're a coalition of the willing. We will work with anyone to do good. And it's been a privilege to see Senator Bartolotta partner with Senator Williams, again, two kind of unlikely allies. But this has brought incredible progress in short order from people's willingness to just say, hey, issues first, people first, not party, not caucus, not chamber. And so it's been really wonderful to see.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. We're starting to run a little bit short on time, but we'll give some folks a little more time here. Senator, I wanted to go to you as somebody who's having these conversations every day in Harrisburg, as somebody who has been leading this charge and has continued to fight, for the folks that don't have a voice. As we're moving forward with this, as we continue to really look at sound policy that's going to help Pennsylvanians and everybody in this country, really, what gives you hope moving forward that this is something that we can do and that will make us better?
The hope I have is the fact that we have so many different entities on both sides of the aisle coming forward to work together on this issue. There's so many things that we can change for the better. And we as Republicans, we're not anti-human. We're not, hoping to just throw everybody in jail and, throw away the key. We're suffering those consequences today. The mandatory minimums of the 90s and lock them up, throw away the key, and tough on crime and all of those things. It destroyed families, it destroyed communities, and it destroyed our state. And there's so much more that we can do. And if we truly, truly want to focus on racial equity, which is the hot button of today, obviously, and should be, let us be serious about this when it comes to criminal justice reform. 94 to 95% of individuals who are behind bars right now are African American or Hispanic. 94 to 95%. And you just saw the video of Bloomberg, who was saying, those minorities, I'll just lock them all up. Well, you know what? Here's a problem. 94 to 95% of those people who are incarcerated, they never saw the inside of a courtroom. Never. Much like our Attorney General. But I digress. Did I say that out loud? Sorry. Hey, Heather. Love you, babe. Love you. They never got a hearing. They never got a trial. They were victims of prosecutors who stacked the charges up to the ceiling and said, hey, bud, you're going to have to either cop a plea or I'm going to put you in prison for 30 years. These are individuals who never had a shot, never had a chance. So they got locked up. And it is our duty to try to rectify that. We need to teach people who are incarcerated, because the majority of people behind bars, they have a difficulty with reading and writing. The illiteracy rate of incarcerated individuals is sky high. There is a problem here. When you give people only one option to try to pay their bills, raise their family, stay alive, and survive, and that's doing some, criminal activity, we have to stop that in its tracks. We need to work on education, job training, workforce development. These are people who want to join the workforce. We should be eager, willing. There you go. But we absolutely have to work on that. And the racial disparity caused by people who are of lower economic means is a travesty in the criminal justice system. And we have to work on that. And as Republicans, we're aware of that. We understand it. We are no longer a party who isn't pro-jobs, pro-workforce. We're pro-trade. We want people to go to work. We want people out of incarceration who don't belong there. So I'm thrilled that all of these initiatives that are really getting ahead of steam are finally coming to the finish line. Here in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is the first state in the entire country to have a clean slate program. First one. First one. And we took our cue from President Donald Trump with his First Step Act. So we hope to continue that.
And real quick, we got to wrap up here, but Congressman Reschenthaler, I want to go to you as somebody who has led the charge here and has gotten stuff done, now going to a place that is notoriously difficult to get things done, Washington, D.C. What gives you hope that this issue is going to stay on the forefront of people's mind and is really going to start to change for the better?
Well, what gives me hope is the fact that I think that both sides, Republicans and Democrats, of course, are trying to see the importance of this issue. And I think on our side of the aisle, we're getting back to where we normally were, right? We're the party of limited government. We're the party of individual rights, liberties, and freedom. We have to remember it was the Democrats that were really pushing this lock everybody up mantra. It was frankly Joe Biden who was part of the charge on that. And thankfully, the libertarian streak of our party is now coming out and getting back to our roots of limited government and recognizing that there is a problem here. The fact that every time I have a criminal justice reform bill, I have no problem finding a Democrat co-sponsor. That gives me a lot of hope. So I'm of course, the president is very supportive on this. So I really am positive that we're going to be able to get something done. Now, that said, I do have to say this. I think that some of the actions by celebrities have actually set us back in this because, unfortunately, now kneeling for the anthem, being anti-American is somehow associated with being for criminal justice reform. It's really muddied the issue. So in a lot of ways, those that have tried to help but have done so not through the process, it set us back. I always give the best story. I was having a hard time getting clean slate to pass in the Senate with the House. We passed in the Senate unanimously. This is when I was in the state Senate, went to the House of Representatives in the state. In the Philadelphia, we were having a hard time with some Philadelphia Republicans. So we brought in some players from the Eagles, and they came and met face to face with some of the individuals I targeted as not getting on board with us. They were nice enough to accommodate that request, and that actually got these individuals to my side. That was very constructive. What was very destructive was what we're seeing going on now. So hopefully we can overcome this setback and we can get back to normalcy and continue to push these bills forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody so much. We're going to have to wrap it up here, unfortunately, but please, one more round of applause for our great panelists here.